Imagine living in a world where a single bullet could change your destiny, where hope didn't arrive with an army but fell silently from the sky. In the middle of World War II, while history remembers massive tanks, roaring bombers, and legendary rifles, there existed a weapon so cheap, so secret, that the US government didn't even want to talk about it after the war. It cost just $15, less than a pair of boots, yet it carried a fear more powerful than artillery. This was not a gun built for soldiers. It was built for prisoners, civilians, and resistance fighters who had already lost everything. Picture this: you are trapped behind enemy lines, watched every day, surrounded by uniforms that control your streets, your food, and your future. Then one night, hidden among supplies or buried in the ground, you find a small metal pistol. One shot, one chance, no backup, no escape plan. That moment is where this story begins. Because this gun was never meant to win a war, it was meant to start one from the inside. Long before modern psychological warfare had a name, America deployed fear itself as a weapon. Stay with this story, because what happened next proves that sometimes the cheapest weapon can leave the deepest scar on history. Born out of pure wartime desperation, the $15 Liberator pistol emerged in 1942 at a moment when the world was engulfed in fear, occupation, and uncertainty. As Nazi forces tightened the grip across Europe and millions lived under enemy control, American military planners confronted a terrifying question: what could be done for those with no armies, no weapons, and no protection? The answer was not a legendary rifle or a finely engineered handgun, but a crude, disposable weapon designed to change the balance of fear. Cheap, silent in its intention, and deadly in opportunity, the Liberator was created as a last resort gun for resistance fighters, prisoners of war, and ordinary civilians trapped behind enemy lines. This pistol was never meant to win battles in open combat. It was meant to be hidden in a coat pocket, buried in a field, or passed secretly from hand to hand in occupied cities. With a single shot and minimal range, it offered one chance, one moment, to disarm an enemy soldier and seize a real weapon. That was its true purpose. The Liberator represented a dangerous idea, that occupation was never complete, and control could be challenged by anyone, anywhere. In the darkest years of World War II, this $15 gun became a quiet symbol of defiance, proving that even the simplest tool could carry the weight of resistance and the promise of freedom. The industrial heart of wartime America, where factories thundered day and night to feed the fires of World War II, the Liberator pistol was born with a purpose unlike any other weapon. While tanks rolled off assembly lines and bombers filled the skies, this small, rough gun was designed in secrecy, its mission wrapped in silence and urgency. Costing only $15, it challenged the very definition of military power. This was not a weapon for heroes in uniform, it was a weapon for the invisible fighters, the forgotten prisoners, and the civilians living under the shadow of occupation. The Liberator's design was brutally simple: a single shot, smooth barrel, and stamped metal body that could be produced faster than any conventional firearm. Yet behind that simplicity lay a strategic gamble. Dropped into enemy-held territory, the pistol carried a message more powerful than its bullet, that no occupying force was ever truly safe. One hidden gun could change the balance of control, spark resistance, and force fear into the ranks of enemy soldiers. Though many Liberators were never fired, their existence alone served a purpose: spreading uncertainty and hope in equal measure. Long after World War II ended and more advanced weapons replaced it, the $15 gun endured in history, not as a tool of destruction, but as a symbol of courage, ingenuity, and the silent war fought far from the front lines. In a war defined by overwhelming force and industrial might, the $15 Liberator pistol stood as a contradiction to everything World War II represented. While nations measured power in divisions, aircraft, and artillery, this weapon was built on a far more dangerous concept: the empowerment of the powerless. Conceived in secrecy and produced at lightning speed, the Liberator was never meant to survive the war, yet it was designed to change it in subtle, irreversible ways. Its value was not in how long it lasted, but in what it inspired during humanity's darkest hours. The pistol offered no comfort to its user. It was crude, inaccurate, and limited to a single shot, forcing its holder to act with absolute resolve. But that limitation was intentional. The Liberator was a weapon of decision, not endurance, meant to be used at close range, in silence, and without hesitation. One shot could neutralize an enemy soldier and place a real rifle into the hands of someone who had none. That possibility alone made occupation fragile. Even when unused, the Liberator planted fear in the minds of enemy troops and hope among civilians living under control. Long after World War II faded into history, this cheap, disposable gun outlived more advanced weapons in memory, proving that sometimes the smallest tools leave the deepest scars on empires. As World War II spread across continents, the battle was not fought only by armies in uniform, but by ordinary people living under occupation, where survival itself became an act of resistance. It was for these unseen fighters that the $15 Liberator pistol was created. Designed in secrecy and distributed in silence, the weapon was never announced, never celebrated, and rarely acknowledged. Yet its purpose was chillingly clear: to remind the enemy that control was an illusion, and that resistance could rise from anywhere, at any moment. The Liberator was dropped into occupied territories with no instructions beyond the unspoken message it carried. Hidden in barns, cellars, and city streets, it became a symbol of silent warfare. One crude gun in the hands of a civilian could turn fear into action, offering a single chance to strike back and reclaim dignity. For occupying soldiers, the knowledge that such weapons existed was enough to breed paranoia, forcing them to watch every shadow and question every face. Even when never fired, the Liberator succeeded in its mission. It disrupted certainty. It spread doubt. Decades later, while countless advanced weapons were forgotten, this disposable pistol endured in history, not for the battles it won, but for the quiet terror and hope it unleashed far from the front lines of World War II. When historians speak of World War II, they often focus on legendary weapons forged for dominance, rifles that defined armies and machines built to overwhelm nations. Yet hidden beneath those stories is a weapon born not for glory, but for inevitability. The $15 Liberator pistol was designed with the grim understanding that not everyone could be saved, supplied, or protected. In a war where entire populations were trapped behind enemy lines, this small, disposable gun represented a final thread of agency in a world stripped of choice. The Liberator demanded courage from its user. It offered no safety, no second chance, and no guarantee of survival. One bullet stood between life and death, freedom and capture. But that single bullet carried immense weight. It transformed civilians into participants in the war, blurring the line between battlefield and street corner. For occupying forces, this was a nightmare scenario: an enemy without uniforms, without ranks, and without warning. Even as the war ended and the Liberator was quietly destroyed by the thousands, its legacy refused to disappear. Unlike more sophisticated weapons that vanished with time, this crude pistol survived in memory as proof that resistance does not always arrive with armies. Sometimes, it arrives quietly, cheaply, and with the courage of those who have nothing left to lose. Long after the guns of World War II fell silent, the $15 Liberator pistol refused to disappear into obscurity. While more advanced American firearms were replaced, upgraded, and eventually forgotten, this crude, disposable weapon endured as a haunting reminder of a war fought not only by armies, but by ideas. The Liberator was never meant to survive history. It was meant to be used once, discarded, and erased. Instead, it became immortal through the story it told. What made this gun outlive others was not its design, but its meaning. It represented a moment when America chose ingenuity over elegance, symbolism over strength. In the chaos of global war, the Liberator proved that power could be psychological, that fear could be planted with nothing more than the possibility of resistance. Decades later, collectors, historians, and filmmakers would search for surviving examples, not to admire craftsmanship, but to understand intent. This $15 gun came to symbolize a terrifying truth of World War II, that empires could be challenged by individuals armed with nothing but courage and a single chance. As time erased the steel and machinery of war, the idea behind the Liberator remained, an enduring echo of defiance that outlived every gun America ever built. And so, as the guns fell silent and the battlefields of World War II faded into memory, the $15 Liberator pistol remained a quiet legend, proof that the true power of war was never measured in cost or sophistication. While mighty rifles, tanks, and bombers dominated headlines, this tiny, crude weapon told a different story, one of courage, ingenuity, and the indomitable human spirit. It reminded the world that resistance does not always roar, it sometimes whispers, hides, and waits for the perfect moment to strike. The Liberator's legacy is more than a piece of metal. It is the embodiment of hope against impossible odds, the symbol of ordinary people standing up when the world told them they had nothing. One bullet, one chance, one decision, that was all it took to spark defiance, disrupt control, and inspire movements that would echo long after the war ended. Its simplicity became its strength, its low cost a sharp contrast to the priceless courage it demanded. Today, collectors and historians study the Liberator not for its firepower, but for the story it carries, a story of silent rebellion, creativity under pressure, and the enduring truth that sometimes the smallest tools leave the deepest mark on history. In a world of empires and armies, the $15 gun proved that power, memory, and legend are often forged in the humblest of ways.